It's now 7:03. We're going to call for a quorum count. I got 7:03. My watch is set by Greenwich Mean Time. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 has 7. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 14. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 9. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 12. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 9. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 10. 11. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 4. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 5. We need a quorum. A quorum is 74, not 75. We've had a couple of deaths. Well, right now we have 71.
And what do we have to have?
Okay, how many? Precinct 2. Precinct 1, how many? Precinct 8. Okay.
Hey, you tell that guy to be very careful of that seat.
Do we have? I'll give you 2 more. Yeah, I figured that.
It is heated.
Oh, by the way, I didn't even give you some. I do have.
Count the baby?
I do have second pages, supposedly. Here you go. No, that's done. He's quiet. No, he's not quiet right now. He still knows how to dial a telephone with one eye. Are we ready to start a second count?
Yes.
7:06. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 is 8. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 17. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 9. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 12. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 10. Please keep it down. I hear too much background. Precinct 6. Precinct 6, 12. Precinct 6 is 12. Precinct 7. Precinct 7.
Nancy.
Precinct 7 is 5. Precinct 8. 8 is 5.
78.
There are 78 town meeting members present. That's 4 over the quorum. Will you all please rise and join me in saluting the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are we going to get frozen out tonight?
I know.
Do we have is there a custodian available? We need to do something with those lights. I don't know, Bud lights. What's that? I can see here, but I can't. All right, whatever you can do to get. I mean, we got that. That's all taken care of. There's some pieces of paper to be handed out. Mr. Cohn? Mr. Cohn? What you asked. Okay, my announcements are going to be very brief. There has been deposited or circulated a second copy on Article 9 of a proposed motion. I will make a decision whether that is suitable or what. It's been circulated, and there has been circulated a possible substitute motion on Article 3, which last week, or last Wednesday, at the previous session, I want to make one reminder. Sitting in the precincts, all duly elected and sworn town meeting representatives are to be seated in their respective precincts. We have a lot of people who have moved off to the side. The only people who should be up front, who are town meeting members, are members of the Board of Selectmen, the school, and the Finance Committee, and the school committee if there is a school article in the warrant. Other than that, we're ready to take and continue where we left off. At the previous session, a vote had been taken pursuant to a motion to cut off debate on Article 3. After taking a standing count on the consolidated sum of $282,217, there were 72 members voting, 3 short of the stated quorum. And as a result, the main motion remains on the table when they adjourned at 10:52. That means we have to somewhat go back just a couple of steps. And the first... Wait a minute. Let me finish. All right? We can get too restless and mess up again. We don't need to do any more mess-ups. The procedure will be as follows. I will recognize the chairman of the Finance Committee to take the article off the table. Then there will be a restating of the motion, and whether that is to be a divided motion, as you've got a sample of, or which is up to a vote, or whether to do it still as we started out before, because basically, I don't think there should be any, let's put it this way, there was a motion to cut off debate, and I'm going to still say that that still applies. Mrs. Anzavino, to take off the table.
A motion to take Article 3 off the table?
And a restatement of the motion.
Okay, so...
Mr. Brown, all right. Barbara,
Okay, if everybody looks at this paper that you just got today, the only difference is that it's now labeled A, B, C, D, E, and then the numbers are exactly the same, but it's telling you which ones it goes to. So I'm going to read the motion that's in the book. That the town vote to appropriate the sum of $282,217 to supplement fiscal 2016 department budget expenses listed within this article, and that to meet this appropriation, $82,878 be raised in the tax levy, and that will be for A and C. $184,803 to be raised from fiscal 2016 Water Department revenue. That would be for D and B, and $14,536 be raised from the fiscal 2016 Sewer Department revenue, and that would be for number E.
All those in favor of taking off the table, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. On the motion to divide the question, that is up to,
What motion?
yes, you need, I took it off the table, that's
Yeah,
all,
to take
so
it off the
far.
table.
I-
There was no motion to divide.
I I'm going to, the comment from town council, according to town meeting times, you need a motion, and it's not debatable, it's either do it or don't. No, I'm just asking for it.
Well, I'm not giving it.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion carries. All right, motion carries to divide the question, so voted.
Okay, go up there and say motion to cut off.
And here's how we'll do that. I will
That was, no, that was.
ask
to take
Mr.
the whole thing. That was-
Brown, who brought this up. All right, it's very simple. I'll make this first statement is item A, or 3A if we want to call it for vote. Please state the dollar amount.
Wait a minute, we just voted, I thought we just voted to
No,
vote the whole
no,
thing.
we voted to divide the question.
No, we didn't.
I just took the first vote I have it already recorded. The first vote I took was to take the motion off the floor.
Yeah.
You have to move. You wanted me to move quickly? I did. All those in favor of taking the motion off the floor?
We
Off
did.
the table? Off the floor. Second, I recognized Mrs. Anzavino to make a motion to divide the question.
No, I never to make that motion.
You recognize Peter Murphy,
Yeah, I didn't, oh, I never said that.
Okay, at this point, the moderator stands corrected. Mr. Murphy,
My motion was, still is, to vote on it as printed in the handout that we got tonight. We take a vote, we move on.
okay.
In its entirety.
No, what you received was the motion to divide. If anybody,
No, it wasn't.
that's what that motion
Oh,
for,
I didn't use the word individual. Yeah, that's what I said. I didn't use individual. Right, but I never read that. I never read it. I simply said that they were A, B, C, and D. Right.
please do not argue, but if we're going to debate on the debate about the debate, Mr. Murphy.
As printed in the book, originally printed out,
As in, the-
one vote, that's it.
okay. I do have a page for that. And I'm going to recognize Mr. Murphy,
The word individual.
and this is at 7:15. And you can vote it down if you wish, okay? If you want to divide the question. But Mr. Murphy is asked to go in that order. All those in favor of going with the motion that was originally stated at the previous session? As printed, no, as printed, also as printed in the recommendations.
Aye.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous to do that. We will now proceed to have one vote.
We did vote.
Yeah.
Peter Murphy made the motion as written in this handbook.
Get there and say,
Kathy Silva seconded it, and that's what we just voted.
can we just vote on it?
Okay, it was unanimous.
So you want to say that, if you want to announce that.
As interpreted at the table here, and I agree with it, Mr. Murphy's motion was to vote the entire thing as printed in the warrant, and I will restate it, just so that we're all clear, that was to appropriate the sum of $282,217 to supplement fiscal 2016 department budget expenses listed within this article, and that to meet this appropriation, $82,878 be raised in the tax levy, $184,803 be raised from fiscal 2016 water department revenue, and $14,536 to be raised from fiscal 2016 sewer department revenue. And I do hear an awful lot of conversation back there, and that's what stops and confuses people. On that, you voted that, and I will declare it unanimous, and we go on.
But we haven't voted on the article. We voted to vote it. We didn't vote to vote. We
The
didn't
clerk
vote
has,
it.
the clerk has reminded me that that vote you just took was on the whole thing as printed in the warrant. We already had debate and discussion before.
That was to
Mr.
vote it,
Dolinsky.
not to vote.
And that's, it's not the article, we vote the motion.
Right, we have not voted.
No, we vote the motion. And his motion was exactly what was printed in the warrant. It says recommended motion or recommendation.
Yeah, let's just vote on the article, just to make sure.
You don't vote articles, Mr. Dolinsky. You've been in town meeting a long time. We vote the motion, and the motion was based on what is stated in the article. That has been the procedure for many more years than we've been in this town meeting, all of us together combined. And therefore, I will agree with exactly what the clerk has recorded, and is that we did take a unanimous vote on that motion in the warrant, the recommended motion. I don't have to take...
We're never going home, just so we all know.
If you want to make... All right, if there's a doubt in anybody's, the mind of anybody, mine, like mine, and everybody else's now,
Yeah, let's just vote the article.
Mr. Murphy.
This is how I have it, right here,
Okay.
okay? Unanimous vote to, as written in the
We
warrant.
only have one motion on the floor.
What was written in the article.
We voted that we would take it its entirety, but we didn't vote
As
on
written
the
in the
article.
warrant. You changed it, you modified it.
As opposed to this.
Correct.
Mr. Moderator, for
Yes, Mr. Mo-
clarification,
Mr. Murphy,
we were handed a piece of paper this evening.
yes.
What I did was, I made a motion that we go by what was printed in the warrant. That's all I said. That was all my motion,
That's correct.
not this. It was not the actual article itself.
No, it was what was printed in the warrant.
To go by that. That was to open up
Which,
discussion, do whatever.
no, that was, when you make, we know, the article was still on the floor, and it was brought back just to be restated. We now have a motion. You asked, what's printed in the warrant book is the recommendations. We've always voted on the recommendations or whatever's been printed. When you did, that motion is what we go to vote on. We don't vote on articles. And you made a statement,
I understand, okay.
and
So
I stated at the beginning, we had all the debate at the last session.
all right.
There was a motion at that time to cut off debate. And I took that. No, it does not.
Just get up and move the table.
I had to take it off the table because we did not have a quorum when we took that vote. You now have a quorum.
Correct.
Please come to the microphone if you want to discuss this any further. Yes, and therefore, if there's doubt in the mind of the chair, all those in favor, please rise on the motion. One person at a time. When there's doubt in the mind of the chair,
Can we have discussion before we have the vote?
you had discussion at the last session. If that was my statement at the
We didn't have
beginning.
a quorum, so we didn't have the opportunity to discuss
That
it.
was, until there was a revelation that the votes we had been taking at that minute were under the quorum count. We have to go back to the one step to take it off the table and take the vote, because the last motion was to cut off debate. Therefore, since there is doubt in the mind of the chair, and to make an affirmation of a vote, I'm going to ask for a standing count on the original motion, which was printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please rise.
We're voting for the article now.
Please, we are only voting on the motion
My motion,
and printed in the warrant.
give them $282,000.
Precinct 1. Precinct 1 is 7. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 16. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 9. Precinct 4. 11? Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 10. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 11. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 4. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 5. All those opposed, please rise. Chairman, take a count. If you don't stand, you won't get counted. Precinct 1.
2 no and 2 abstentions.
Precinct 2. 1. Precinct 2 is 1. Precinct 3. 1. Precinct 3 is 1. Precinct 4. 1. Precinct 4 is 1. Precinct 5. 0. Precinct 5 is 0. Precinct 6. 1. Precinct 6 is 1. Precinct 7. 1. Precinct 7 is 1. Precinct 8. 1. Precinct 8 is 1. I got 72. You got 73? And the motion carries. 72 yes, 8 no, and 2 abstain. That means we have 82 people voted. We will move on.
Thank God. Okay, here we go. That was my fault. I should have read that motion more carefully. All right,
Now, let's see, we go on.
let's keep moving this on.
I got a lot of paper in here. Article 4, Mrs. Anzavino.
That the town vote to appropriate the sum of $47,500 to complete the Stoughton Fiber Optics design proposal, which includes running fiber optic cables, equipment upgrades, configurations, and installation of the Stoughton Public Safety Fiber Optic Network to support a central police, fire, EMS communication center located in the police station and connecting to the Ash Street Water Tower and the Central Street Water Tower to the police station to provide necessary infrastructure to accommodate the communication center, including all necessary and incidental expenses, and that to meet this appropriation, $47,500 be raised in the tax levy.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Rick Hill, Precinct 2. This is related to the new central dispatch, is that correct?
No.
Yes, it is. But we're withdrawing Article 6. So why are we doing this?
Says here. Ryan McGee, please explain.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Need to call IT.
Hey, Ryan.
Hello. This project is to lay fiber optic cables to the water towers to build the infrastructure needed to support a communication upgrade for the fire and police stations. The police station has a prior warrant article in place, secured, to build the equipment out. And what this is going to do is build the infrastructure that they can use to increase communications for public safety.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the
Mr. Hill.
speaker. So if the communications center, is built somewhere else, will the fiber optic system support it somewhere else?
Yes, the fiber optic system in place, what we're doing is we're putting it in place to alleviate dead zones around Stoughton.
Yeah.
And also it increases security. And what's nice about the fiber optic system is once in place, it's very low maintenance, but it's also going to allow us as a town to continue to grow and improve our communications over the years. So it has lots of benefit, increased security and so forth. And yes, it can be used regardless, even with other municipal buildings as well.
Then I would be in favor. Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? There being only one motion, that is to appropriate the sum of $47,500 as printed in the warrant, and to meet this appropriation, printed in the recommendation book. To meet this recommendation, $47,500 be raised on the tax levy. Requires only a simple majority vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. I will declare it a vote unless somebody wants it on record. That being said, it's unanimous. It carries. That's all. It's not,
Somebody else has to do 5 and 6.
it's voted. That's all. What? You can look at these things so long and then you don't see them at all. Article 5, I recognize the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Moderator, move to withdraw.
The word is to dismiss. On the motion to dismiss, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion is carried. Article 6,
Motion to dismiss.
any discussion? If not, all those in favor of dismissing say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Article 7, Mrs. Anzavino.
That the town vote to appropriate the sum of $1,825,000 for the engineering services for design, permitting, construction documents, bidding assistance, construction of replacement well, and chemical addition facility station at Muddy Pond, including all necessary and incidental expenses, and as funding therefore, to authorize the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to borrow said sum pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44, Section 8, 7 or 8, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes therefore.
All right, any discussion? No debate, no discussion, no explanation? If not, on the motion, which requires a two-thirds vote, all those in favor, please rise and the chairman take account. Precinct 1. 11. Precinct 1 is 11. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 17. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 11. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 13. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 10. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 11. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 6. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 6. All those opposed, and chairman take account. Precinct 1. 0. Precinct 1 is 0. Precinct 2. 0. Precinct 2 is 0. Precinct 3. 0. Precinct 3 is 0. Precinct 4. 0. Precinct 4 is 0. Precinct 5. 0. Precinct 5 is 0. Precinct 6. 0 and 1 extension. Precinct 7. 0. Precinct 7, 0. Precinct 8. 0. Precinct 8 is 0. The account is the motion passes 85 yes, 0 no, 1 abstention. Article 8. Mrs. Anzavina.
That the town vote to rescind the unissued borrowing authorized in the total amount of $250,000 for the 2013 annual town meeting, Article 28, ID 12, a rehab exterior of the railroad station.
Anybody wish to speak? Mr. Forrest Lindwall.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Forrest Lindwall, Precinct 5. In 2013, the Redevelopment Authority was attempting to acquire the Stoughton Depot building, and we had an RFP out for a private developer to come in. In essence, we were going to flip it. And so what we asked town meeting for was money to rehab the exterior, because we were a little bit concerned about water intrusion and some other things that were going on, to basically try and expedite some rehabilitation. The next two articles are going to address where we're going forward, and based on the fact that that particular motion had repayment terms in it as a part of the agreement with the Community Preservation Committee, it made more sense to just simply dismiss this or rescind this article at this point in time, because going forward, we're not into the sort of the repayment issue.
Any further discussion? This only requires a majority vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I would say it's a unanimous vote. And that is 737. We are moving. Okay. Here is a question. We have been in receipt of differing documents. And since there was something prepared at the last meeting, I'm going to ask what was on the blue sheet that was last time. What is the difference between that and what was handed to me this evening? As you know, we have a 24-hour rule, actually a 30-hour rule, and we actually have had several days in between. Mr. Morton, could you explain what is the difference between what was put in the book?
Mr. Moderator, may I make a motion and put this on the floor?
No, before, I want to know what the difference is, because I might say a motion is out of order. So I
Well,
want to know what is the difference between what we received.
have had a conference with town council who has reviewed the motion.
Please,
We have been talking with town council who has reviewed the motion. There is, the substantive difference is that ultimately, the Board of Selectmen has to be the entity that negotiates for a purchase like this, and the CPC cannot basically tell the Board of Selectmen how to negotiate. But what we have here is simply a motion that allows us to.
that's one of the pigeons in the railroad station.
I'm sorry?
Is that one of the pigeons in the railroad station?
That was my cell phone, and I apologize for that. I should have turned it off. I would add that there is a change that has to be made in the motion that's before you. It says to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire the land. It has to say the building and land. You have to add those two. As under Article 9. Article 9 describes both building and land, so this motion should say building and land also. And what it does is it says we will appropriate up to, that's an up to number, $250,000 to buy the station. However, there have been a lot of questions asked, and I think we should go through them very quickly, and I will go through them very quickly. We do not want.
Yeah, but we haven't got the motion on the table.
I'm sorry? Well, I understand. I have to make the motion, and I want permission from the moderator to do that.
Could you explain that very?
I think council is
quickly
explaining
to
to the moderator the difference. While he's doing that, I would. I can save some time by. I can save some time by saying nobody in this room, including the selectmen, want to
version
buy
3
this
was-
building if it cannot be
This is stuff
used
that
for
was
all
handed out
town
last week.
purposes or even commercial purposes, if it cannot be sold, if there is a requirement that we have to accommodate
had some
commuters
recent come
inside the
through.
building, because that lowers the value of the building. If the
Okay,
T
but
wants
you-
to use this building to accommodate commuters, let them own it. Let them fix it up. Let them heat it. Let them operate it.
Yeah.
That's not what this article does. What this article basically does is say, we will pay up to $250,000 to buy it, but we may pay zero. We may pay $175,000. We may pay nothing. There is a lot of room to negotiate here because the T, quite frankly, views this as surplus property and doesn't want it. The T had some obligation to keep it up and didn't. So there's nobody here who wants to give away money. And what this does is it allows, under the historic preservation rubric of the Community Preservation Act, to appropriate up to $250,000 to buy this as approved by the Community Preservation Committee. We anticipate that there would be no restrictions, and we anticipate if restrictions are required that determine that the building cannot be used reasonably
So I
as
can-
we see fit,
Building and land.
we will not buy it. So if the T wants to keep it for commuters, let the T keep it for commuters, let them fix it, let them heat
No,
it,
we have to-
let them fix the roof and so on. So that's what you will be voting on here. You are not voting absolutely to buy it. You are voting to allow the selectmen to go in and say across the table, we have approval to buy it, we don't have approval, I have approval to buy it up to $250, but we don't want to give you $250 because it's not worth it. And we will not buy it with the conditions that we have, that rumor has it, that will be imposed. And so I would urge you to adopt this resolution so that we will put the selectmen in a position to go in and represent this town to get this wonderful historic building and use it for town purposes or lease it and or even sell it with appropriate historic restrictions so that we can build and rejuvenate the center around it. Just so you know, this building was built with granite, as I understand it, quarried right here in Stoughton. It's a remarkable structure, and it should be preserved, and it could be a centerpiece for the reconstruction of the center. So I urge that we appropriate it, and I want to quash any rumors that part of this purchase would be accepting restrictions that make the building less valuable or less useful to the town.
With that understanding, I'm going to ask Mr. Morton, I will make sure to listen that what I am reading is on this white piece of paper. I will agree that this is a correction, it's not a changing of the scope, and therefore is admissible to this body, and that's my ruling, and town council has explained some things that came in and went out of this. However, I will read it into the record so that when it gets in a recording, we know that we said something here. And the motion is to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire the building and land described in the warrant under Article 9 for historic preservation purposes under the Community Preservation Act, as well as for general municipal purposes and for the purpose of leasing and/or conveyance, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to convey said property subject to an historic preservation restriction, or to convey only an historic preservation restriction, provided that in other forms and conditions as it deems appropriate, and for the acquisition of said property to appropriate the sum of $250,000 as approved by the Community Preservation Committee, and to meet this appropriation, $250,000 be transferred from undesignated community preservation funds as reported as of June 30, 2015, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to execute all instruments, including deeds, leases, and/or other agreements, and to take all other action as may be necessary to effectuate the transactions provided for here under. And it's still, because this is a transfer, it only requires a majority vote. Mr. Forrest Lindwell, if you wish to. Are you reading off the, I'm just. That wouldn't be a bit surprising. I will take it that we now know that that correction is. Well, I can see nobody. Mr. Lindwell, yes. No, on the motion, yes. Is there a second?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Forrest Lindwall, Precinct 5. As you know, the Redevelopment Authority spent the better part of 2 years in a very down real estate climate attempting to acquire this building at the $350,000 price and, in fact, repurpose it and sell it to a private entity. At the 11th hour this past February, that deal fell through. The Redevelopment Authority approached the Board of Selectmen, explained the situation to them, and we came upon an agreement to partner between the Redevelopment Authority and the Board of Selectmen to work towards this day. So we went to the MBTA and we got an extension of time to close the deal until December 31st, 2015. With the understanding that the Board of Selectmen would approach the Community Preservation Committee and seek funding, and that we would work alongside them as diligently as we possibly could. All of the due diligence was done by the Redevelopment Authority. We expended over $30,000 in surveying, 21E environmental assessments, title, search, appraisal, and legal fees. And so there's no effort in terms of closing costs or any of that. It is simply the issue of negotiating the final terms of the purchase and sale agreement. One of the suggestions that I have made to the Board of Selectmen, and it's been shown to me that it is in the enabling legislation of the Community Preservation Act, that we can, in fact, form a 501c3 nonprofit entity, if you will, to operate and maintain this building. I know that people have voiced strong opinions, particularly at the Finance Committee, that the town doesn't necessarily have the best record in terms of acquiring real estate or being the owner of its buildings. That is something that I personally would pledge to work with the Board of Selectmen to make sure that that is not going to happen. This is an anchor, if you will, to the downtown redevelopment plan that the SRA is working on. It conforms to what the master plan is all about, so it's an extremely important thing. And for those of you who were not able to attend, we had an open house tour of the depot a week ago, this past Saturday, 2 weeks ago, excuse me. We had about 75 people come through, and I think a lot of people had a somewhat different opinion of the structure when they left the open house. They could see the value inside, the woodwork above the floor level, the ceilings, the fireplace, absolutely just a gem of a historic building inside. There was a young man there, a young couple actually moved here from Somerville just recently, and he was taking photographs. He took about 36 different pictures, which he did post on the Facebook page, Stoughton Enthusiasts. And he made a quote at the end of it, which was, and his name is Andrew Tibbs, "This building deserves a second chance at life." Ladies and gentlemen, we now have that opportunity. The CPC does have appropriate funds, sufficient funds, and it is appropriate to use those funds for historic preservation. I obviously urge you to join in support of this motion. Thank you.
Mr. McCrisky.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I stand here with Selectman O'Regan. Come on up. Let's do this together.
We're going to do every other word.
Every other word. Somebody already said, take a snapshot. The Board of Selectmen are united. Bob's going to give you more of a little bit of a history of where the train station came from. Mine is more on not being a member of the Board of Selectmen, but a member of the Historical Society. And if anybody has seen the old fire truck we have, back when I was able to raise the money for the fire truck in 2006, we got it in 2007, there was a lot of people at the Historical Society that didn't want it. It was too big a project. What are we going to do with it? What if it breaks down? Where are we going to keep it? Everything that could be done to pop holes in what we were going to do. And I answered them the same that I've answered people when it comes to the train station. What are we going to do? Give us the building. Let us find a plan, whether it is a business use, whether it's a commercial use, whether it's a town use. Right now, we can't do anything until we have the building. There's so much we can do with it. But the most important thing of all is it's going to make a statement on how we feel about the history of our community. And the building was built from stone in Stoughton, wagoned up Morton Street to build the train station. And This is a crucial part of the downtown revitalization, as Forrest mentioned, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Forrest here on behalf of the members of the Board of Selectmen for all the work, and John Morton, what they've done working with the Board of Selectmen to get this before you tonight. The building is a beautiful building. There's a lot we can do with it. Some of us are envisioning green space around the building, maybe acquiring more of the parking spaces from the T, trading off other sections. So there's a lot we can do with the building. But again, not until you vote to authorize the purchase. And like the old fire truck right now that goes out and represents our town all over this area, we've been in New Hampshire with it and northern Connecticut. It's going to be another jewel of our town. So with that, I'll yield to Mr. O'Regan, who's going to give you a little bit more of the background.
Thank you, Joe. And I want to echo what Joe said. Kudos to the Redevelopment Authority and particularly to Forrest Lindwell for the hard work they've done on trying to acquire this building for the community. I don't know if Joe's going to be taking the train station to Connecticut or any other place. I can tell you where it came from. So what we've done to prepare for what we would do next is, pardon me, look into the history of this station, and I'd like to address some of the beliefs or comments on where this station came from and why we're in the position we're in. The station was built, I believe, in 1888 through granite quarried in the community. If you go in there, as I did almost every day for 20 years, to take the train, you will see magnificent craftsmanship in the woodwork, stuff you will not see most places today. It's a gem of a building. How does this fit in to where we want the downtown to go? In the master plan that both Forrest and Joe have alluded to, one of the visions is to create a green in that square. The dimensions still to be worked out between the railroad track, Washington Street, Wyman Street, and Porter Street to make the downtown livable, pleasant, a place to go, community space. And frankly, the train station, restored and lit up, will be a true monument to the town and a focal point for that open space. The idea is to make it usable and productive. We know that that area of the square is fairly destitute now, and we need to do something to prime the pump. This is a way to do it. Options include, and there are some discussions about options with some banking institutions and also perhaps the post office to relocate the counter service and mailbox units into that building to make it more of a destination if we're able to get the post office property to open up for a green in the square, and we'll move some of the back office things somewhere else in the town. But in order to address any of those opportunities, we need to get control over the building. How are we going to approach a price? Well, over TV, really not the place to discuss negotiating strategy, but here's what we know from the history. There's some belief that the town of Stoughton once owned this building and that the state got it from Stoughton for nothing sometime in the 80s. That turns out not to be quite accurate. So the history is through a bunch of railroads until the mid-70s, when, if you're a fossil like me, you remember the Seven Sisters, Penn Central, New York, New Haven Railroad, several others, went bankrupt. Well, this line and that station house were part of the New York, New Haven system. So when they went belly up and the railroads kept all the nice, valuable property and spun out corporations, they were stuck with these relatively non-valuable assets that went to us as taxpayers through the bankruptcy. It would appear, and say I have a 2/3 confidence factor in this, it appears that the MBTA acquired ownership of that building from the bankruptcy estate of the New York, New Haven Railroad under a grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation, which suggests that they required the property for, not a whole lot, if any, consideration. We're not done with that, but a philosophy is if they got it with a grant, we're going to do better. We've been in very close contact with our legislative team to help us on that level as well, and we know from a couple of programs that Selectman Recouper and I have been in that this new administration has a philosophy that they are touting about cooperating with local government, state and local government cooperation to make things work. So we want to tie into all of that with an ability to close a deal to get this done. And that's where the $250,000 appropriation will give us the ability to get a deal done when we can and how we can. There are consequences for not doing this deal now. that building is not getting any better. The cost to repair and secure it are only going to go up because it's not getting maintained. That means ultimately, if it comes to us, if we have to pay something now to secure it and prevent further deterioration, we're making more money because we all know it's better to prevent deterioration than it is to try to fix it after the fact. So that's why I'm urging you to support this article. I believe it'd be fair to say that the Board of Selectmen has no intention, if we can avoid it, of spending $250,000, but we also believe that this is an opportunity that we cannot let pass by because it is part of the pieces of the puzzle to make the downtown work. If we all say we want to make the downtown work, we have to invest. 2 years ago, we voted to invest in a new library. And part of the philosophy behind that was we have to do that to make the town work. It's the same theory for this. So I ask you to please vote yes on this. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dick Fitzgerald, Precinct 3. There's just so many questions to be asked, and sometimes I'm not sure where to begin, but try to bear with me. We have a substitute motion that was read in by the maker of the motion and the moderator. And it says on the first line to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire the land described in warrant article in the warrant under Article 9. So, to anyone who can answer this, are we now still purchasing Parcel A, Parcel B1, and Parcel B2? Most definitely.
The plan for that is on the table as you came into the building. Yes, it's 3 parcels. Parcel A is the building and the 7 parking spaces immediately to the rear. Parcel B1 is 20 spaces that go from on the opposite side of the depot alongside the Stoughton Bakery, going back 20 spaces. And parcel B2 are 3 spaces that we separated out as a land parcel to the extent that if we do have the post office coming under the town control, there's a pass-through, if you will, from the train station lot over to the post office lot. And the plan does say, okay, from the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority to the Stoughton Redevelopment Authority. That's assignable to the town, but we did that, the redevelopment did that plan, and it can be very easily changed. It's not been filed with the registry yet, to say from the MBTA to the town of Stoughton. That's a very simple $50 change that we can make.
Mrs. Clip? Oh, Mr. Fitzgerald. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's pick up a little bit on that. We will own a building, or we're being asked, the members here are being asked to vote to purchase this. It will go and be negotiated by the Board of Selectmen. It's not going to be going to the Redevelopment Authority. It's going to be going to the town of Stoughton through the Board of Selectmen. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So that's a good thing because authorities shouldn't be getting involved with municipalities. They're 2 separate entities. My question now is that we're going to own parcels of land that, along with the building, we're picking up liability. Mary Smith and Harry Jones are running to get the train, and the town of Stoughton that will be clearing the lot doesn't clear it very, very well, and under their liability policy has a little clause in it called completed operations. They don't clear it properly, they slip fall. Who's the liability come to? Can somebody tell me that? Through you, Mr. Moderator, the Town Council? Perhaps?
Mr. Fair, on the liability.
There is really no direct way to answer that question because it's going to depend on the facts and circumstances of whatever it is the issue was. So it's your property.
Can I just interrupt
Sure.
1 second? we have a situation right now, and I don't mean, but I will spin off on this. We have a situation right now where we hired, years and years, we've hired private contractors to plow our streets. And there is now, the private contractors must go out and purchase, at an extreme cost to them, $5,000, $6,000 in premium, liability insurance to cover the general liability that will not be covered under their plows, under the trucks. And that's because they have to purchase what's known as completed operations. I tried to inquire of the town if we had that in a policy, and I was told, oh, but of course we do. But I didn't see anything. So my question to be directed is, can the town be held liable if they do not clean the snow properly, if it's not salted, sanded, somebody trips and falls? Does it come back to the people who own the building, which would be the town? Could it?
Again, it depends on the circumstance, but I guess I would answer it this way. Your liability is the same as this town hall building that you may be in. I mean, it's another piece of property that the town owns, and you're subject to the same legal requirements of maintaining as...
But we didn't own it before, but we own it now, and now it's our responsibility to maintain it. If we don't do it right, we could be sued.
Well, again, your liability under Massachusetts law as a municipality is going to be limited to begin with as it stands, but it's no different. I guess the way I would say it is it's no different than any other piece of property that the town will own.
It could still happen. Okay, thank you. So I guess what happens here is that we're going to allow the Board of Selectmen to negotiate a price and will not buy with any conditions. Do we have any idea what the conditions are or will be set at? Can somebody tell me that?
Mr. Lindwall?
There's a couple. One is that the parking spaces that become available, the town would not charge for commuter parking in competition with the MBTA. If we do charge, no, I understand. We have to, the MBTA has a parking management authority that you could get approval from. In essence, we're not going to charge whatever is $5 a day at this point. We're going to do something different if the Board of Selectmen choose to agree to it, okay? I mean, that's basically the type of thing that we're talking about. There's cross easements for the MBTA passengers to go across as there are any other documents. There's nothing that is of that substantive that I have seen so far. We had our legal counsel vet all of those documents, and all those documents will now be vetted through the town manager's office with town council.
I won't go back to the word negotiation, but I will step back to buying with conditions. I'd like to know what the conditions might be. Are we restricted? How restricted are we? Is this going to be something that the members here are going to vote in the positive and find out that, maybe there's something that's going to be put in there that you really can't use it yet? Similar, in fact, to a parcel of land that we own in the North Stoughton section of town, some 96 acres, that had restrictions put into that afterwards, or before, or prior to, but we didn't know about it at the time. Ladies and gentlemen, I was told when I was a young sitting selectman in '94, we were in a meeting on the 3rd floor at Town Hall, and we had to, then town manager Phil Farrington said, we have to go down and we have to talk with the Finance Committee. We did. And when we got down there, we were proposing an article in the amount of $100,000. And the Finance Committee at that time said, we're not approving this. We're not approving this because you do not have a plan. You've got some information on it, but you don't have a plan. We can't approve this. Those words were true in '94. They hold true now. We have a lot of information here, but speculative. And right now, you will not find a developer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that will develop something on speculation. We have no idea firmly what we're getting. We're getting a piece of land. But I think we are getting some real heavy liability. I would urge you not to support this. And if they want to come back later on and find something, polish it up a little more, do that. But I don't think anybody is going to the transportation building and knocking down the door at the MBTA to say, we'd like to buy that. Maybe we can outbid the town of Stoughton or do whatever. I'd urge you not to support this. Thank you.
Mr. McCrisky, do you want to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. 1994, I was there with Dick. There was some great conversation then. There's not a lot that can be done with that building with the restrictions to Mass Historical. It's on the historic register, National Historic Registers. So it just comes down to a simple thing of, do you want to take the chance? Do we want to have a building that was built in Stoughton by Stoughton residents in 1888? Do we want to take the chance on losing the history? If that doesn't mean anything to you, by means, go with Mr. Fitzgerald's idea. But I think this is one of the times that, we can all sit up here and have our differences. And I've always said, Stoughton being Stoughton, don't let a good idea get in the way of messing something up. But this is what we're all about. This is the backbone of what we are. This is a building that's sat in our town, and those who were born and raised here walked up there, going by, the building back when it was the New Haven Railroad on your way to school. That's what I remember. Or sitting up there talking with friends when we rode our bikes up there to meet, to go into the donut shop up in the center of town. It was a place that we saw when we were going home from Golden Rays, Drum and Bugle Corps, some of us that are here. It is a part of our community. Do we want to take a chance because we don't have a blueprint that's going to take us to the next few years? Sometimes leadership is jumping over the edge and building our wings on the way down. What's the building worth to you? If you care about the history of the town, you care about trying to do something with downtown, this is a key element. There is protections into the building. The Board of Selectmen are not going to, I have no intention of negotiating myself into a hole. We're going to try to negotiate the lowest price, if a price. I mean, I could argue we should get it for $1 or even given to us by the state. Those mechanisms have been put in place. We're doing everything we can. If we decide to vote the article down, are we sure what's going to happen with the building? Are we going to see somebody buy it later on for a bargain price that we could have got it for and used it for the right idea? And then there's some kind of a shop with neon in the windows and purple colors and I mean, are we ready for that? That's what can happen here. We're trying to do the right thing. We want to preserve history. When we look at downtown, we want to be able to put the train station as a pivotal point of what can be done. I mean, we've done things in this town before, and we've had some bold ideas. This is a bold idea. Look at the people that are speaking here before. It's a diverse group. We've come together to ask for your support in voting for this article. I hope that you do, please.
I will not accept that. Mrs. Klipp, you've been waiting very patiently.
Excuse me if my voice is a little raspy. I got a thingy going on here. The doctor says I'm okay, though. I won't die tonight. Karen Klipp, Precinct 5. In 1998 and 99, I was the Old Colony Transportation Rep for the community, and also the chair of the Commission on Disabilities. When you gave me $2.5 million in my committee to make all the buildings handicap accessible, this was one of the buildings we were looking at. And we had run into a problem. Mr. Farrington told us at the time that we didn't have a signed lease with the MBTA. So I went to my boss, Congressman Joe Moakley, and he tried to bridge a lease for us. And we were this close to getting the building for nothing. Not just a lease, they were just going to give us the building. But our legal counsel advised us not to get involved in it because at that time, they wanted us to assume or take over the liability of the platform. And our legal counsel told us they wouldn't even, they advised us not to touch it, so the town dropped it. And we had also gotten money, tip money from the state to rehab that building. And the last time I checked, about 5 years ago, Lou Kafka told us that that money doesn't go away. It will always stay there unless somebody goes in and takes it away like we do with our articles. And to his knowledge, that money is still sitting there. Has anyone, well, I guess the question through you, Mr. Moderator, to our legal counsel, what has changed your firm's opinion? Why should we buy this?
Mr. Fair? Well, she asked town council first. Council, you have?
Mr. Moderator, I wasn't here, involved in that purchase back in, you said it was 1999, so I, really can't speak to that, but it sounds like Mr. O'Regan may be able to.
May I, Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
This proposed purchase specifically excludes the platform. The platform is not within the scope of this acquisition. A way to look at it is that the purchase of the building, you've heard about the parking spaces, but Mr. Moderator, a fair way to look at it is that the building that we would be looking at would be the drip edge of would be the eaves down and nothing outside of that. So if you're on the track side. So if you are standing and getting wet, you're getting wet on the MBTA's dime. If you're dry and you're looking up and your back is to the building, you're within what the town would purchase, but it is specifically excluding anything to do with the platform and liability with respect to maintenance of the platform.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. That's excellent, and I support this 100%.
Mr. Cohn?
Just want you to know at the last selectmen meeting, if anyone viewed it, there was a unanimous vote to put a committee together. And the committee consists of Selectman Recupero, Selectman McCrisky, the town manager, and town council. That's your negotiating team. And I think they should have an opportunity to go in and do the best thing they can for this town. Everyone talks about the selectmen all a mess. You'd be surprised how close-knit group we have here. Don't be shocked. We agree in a lot of things, and this is one of them. I please hope you vote for it. And by the way, I went to that building, and I haven't been in there in years. It's magnificent inside. Fireplace that works. The wood is magnificent. The only thing we have to really do is to bring it up to handicap specs. And believe me, we will give you something back, and it's going to be right the first time. So that's a promise to me, from me to you. So please support this article.
Mr. Terry? Mr. Terry?
Richard Terry, Precinct 6. I support this article fully. This building is unique, one of a kind, a clock tower on a station. I think there's only one. Back in the 70s, our townspeople raised almost $800,000 of hard-earned money to make that building right and get it on the historical register. We owe them, our townspeople, back in the 70s, an affirmative vote. And lastly, in terms of uses, in 1997, the Friends of the Cape and Reynolds Farm needed to raise some money, and we used that building 2 years in a row. We built a temporary platform for a stage. We had a folk singing couple come in. We filled the room, literally with both chambers, the front and the back chamber, with people. We had some of the high school students dressed in white shirts and black trousers walking around giving out refreshments before the entertainment and at an intermission, and it was a rousing success, both in terms of the use of the building and helping us raise a few dollars for the Cape and Farm. Vote yes on this article. Thank you.
Mr. Ventresco.
Peter Ventresco, Precinct 8, Town Meeting Rep. I agree with one of the previous speakers. We have a lot of information.
Come a little closer to the mic.
We have a lot of information, but no plan. I've been going to these meetings for a couple of years, try to get to all of them. And before I could hear these stories, like we got to sell tickets there, coffee, we got to get people out of the rain and snow while they wait for the train. Well, that's not our problem, to get people out of the rain or the snow, because you go down Commonwealth Ave on 128, and you catch the green line there, people out in the snowstorms, rainstorms, no roofs, no anything. The T doesn't supply that, and we shouldn't, because 90% of the riders are all from out of town anyways, they're not Stoughton people. And I noticed here the Finance Committee took a 7-6 vote. I would like to know a little bit of that discussion, how that went. It's not like a favorable vote. There's only a one vote separating.
A lot of people agreed with what you were saying, and a lot of people thought that it was important to buy the train station, and that's why the vote was so close. So I was basically the deciding vote as chairman.
So you
to make
broke
it
the tie.
7.
Okay.
Yeah, I broke the tie. I think it's important that we buy this train station.
And some of the things we heard about, we could go in there, was a donut shop. That doesn't work, because Honeydew was in there for 5 or 6 years and they lost money. And the other end, there was a Dunkin' Donuts, they lost money. A restaurant, I think it's too small to go in there. And as far as, I think the town should not be in the real estate business. They should let the private side buy it. They can't do anything with the outside, so the building's going to be preserved. The only changes they're going to make is going to be on the inside, and it's not going to cost us any money. As far as neon signs, I think the town could pass laws that you can't use them. Now, is this building, once they start cleaning it up and do a little remodel, is this going to fall under the green code? Hello? Is the green code going to apply here? You bring everything up to date. You bring everything up to date as far as insulation goes, weather tight, ER factor. That's a rule we passed last year.
Do we have any response to that?
Yeah, stretch energy.
Obviously, there's the stretch energy code, but there's also exceptions for buildings that are on the National Historic Register. And if you need to actually modify something and it gets down to a decision of that modification versus a particular energy code, there usually are exceptions. Certainly, any of the window replacement is going to be, double hung insulation. But a lot of the woodwork inside, I don't think you're going to tear that down to put in, a whole bunch more of insulation. So it's kind of a catch-22 in the building codes, but there are exemptions, I should say, for buildings on the National Historic Register.
My point was heading to the ceiling, because the roof is a gable roof, and inside it's not the same shape as a roof. It's kind of dome shaped, so that means there's a big airspace between the roof and the ceiling. If you don't heavily insulate that, whoever goes in there is going to go broke trying to heat that. With the bricks, the granite drawing the heat, and everything going right through the ceiling. So I think there's a lot of things here that everybody's kind of over-missed. You can't hear? Well, what I just said was, it's a gate. I didn't speak 5 minutes. You spoke 15.
If you're going to start that debate.
What I said was, it's a gable roof. The ceiling on the inside's a beautiful ceiling. I'll say that. It's domed. So that means there's a big space between the ceiling and the roof. And if you don't insulate that, whoever goes in there is going to go broke trying to keep that heated enough for the people to work comfortably, because the granite's going to draw the heat, and the heat's going to big heat loss in the roof. I don't think this town can afford it, because we're taking on a lot of buildings we got to build, and this is going to be a white elephant.
Could you wind it up, Mr. Ventresco? We've had over 5 minutes.
Do you keep track of all these other people when they talk? Because I think they
They
were
were-
more than
they-
5. All right,
Remember
one
the
more last
gavel
thing.
is here.
We can spend money on white elephants, but we can't do anything for elderly housing. Thank you.
Mr. Rock.
Hi, John Rock, Precinct 3. Are we serious about developing the downtown, improving it? Because this is one of the most historic buildings in the town of Stoughton. It's beautiful. It, as people said before, it can be a centerpiece of the master plan. If we're not going to invest in projects like this, just forget about the master plan. Let's have holes in the ground in Plywood City and just forget about it. You know, it can be used for many different things, and it comes with parking, which has always been said there's a lack of parking downtown. That's why we can't develop it. And I respect the people who are concerned about liability, but we can't constantly fear that. Otherwise, why build a new high school? Why build a new police station? They're going to have parking lots. I mean, you can't be constantly fearful of liability all the time. All the town's buildings come with liability. This would be no different. So I am very strongly in favor of this. I think the clock tower was featured in that little-known movie called Back to the Future. Isn't that true? Well, maybe not. But I think it can be a centerpiece of downtown development, and I think we should seize the opportunity. Thank you.
Point of order. I don't know if we have a quorum. It looks a little bit like they counted maybe 68 people.
Well, at this stage, I'm almost ready to. Mr. Perry. There are people sitting up there. Mr. Perry, very briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm going to ask you to just think at the bigger scope. We can protect the building. I support it. Historically, it's a great building. Okay, number one. Number two, if we want to work with the downtown, if we want to create this downtown area, we want to be able to control that. So that's the second point where I think we should support it. I ask you not to be afraid of a liability situation. We're going to have lots of construction around this town with high schools and libraries. Do we worry about that? No. We buy the insurance and we get covered. All there is to it. I just ask you to support it. I can show you constituents that I have spoken to on a number of occasions who have asked me to support it, and therefore I come to you as a town meeting member asking you to support it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Murphy.
I come all the way down here, the least I can do. Mr. Moderator, through you, move the question.
That's a cut-off debate. On the, and there is a second. At this time, I could take a voice vote, but I think for posterity, I'd like to have a standing count. All those in favor, please rise. On the motion to cut off debate, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the motion carries. On the motion, which had been read without any changes from it, all those in favor, please rise, and the chairman take a count. Precinct 1. 10. Precinct 1 is 10. Precinct 2. 13. Precinct 2 is 13. Precinct 3. 7. Precinct 3 is 7. Precinct 4. 10. Precinct 4 is 10. Precinct 5.
10. Everybody's still here.
Precinct 6. 9. Precinct 6 is 9. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 4. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 4. All those opposed, please rise. I'm getting a quorum count. Precinct 1. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 is 1. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 6. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 4. Precinct 4. 0 and 1. Precinct 5. Precinct 5, any zeros? 6. Precinct 6 has 3. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 1. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 1. You got 58? I've got, what do you got for the precincts on the yes side? I got more than that already.
Hey, after I make the motion, can I talk about it?
22.
Okay.
20. I got,
I was just going to explain the 9-4 vote.
16. The motion carries. It only requires a majority vote. There is a quorum. There are 67 yes, 16 no, and 1 abstention. 67 yes, 16 no, and 1 abstention. Now, do I hear the one thing you want to hear?
We have another article.
Oh, wait a minute. We have an Article 10 here.
And I'm going to talk about it, because after I finish, I'm just going to keep going.
There was,
Thank you for your votes, everyone.
I was going to say, everybody's
what's that?
staying.
Article
Shut the
10.
doors. We're getting
I
this
do
done.
have a recommended motion on it.
Yep, I'm going to read it.
Um,
I'm reading it.
Mrs. Anzavino.
That the sum of $350,000 as approved by the Community Preservation Committee be appropriated for architectural, engineering, and construction services for the rehabilitation of the historic Stoughton Railroad Station building, whether as a grant to the Stoughton Redevelopment Authority or otherwise, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a grant agreement for such purposes, and as funding therefore, that the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow said sum pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44B, 11, General Law, Section 44, Chapter 44, what's the other thing? Subsection 7 or 8, or any other enabling authority, and to assure bonds and notes, therefore, which borrowing is intended to be repaid from the Community Preservation Fund. And can I just say something, Mr.
Yes,
Moderator?
Mrs.
Okay, so as you can see, this was voted 9 in favor and 4 opposed, because after the vote to buy it, members of our committee who had previously voted no said that, well, if you're going to buy it, we do want to pay to preserve it. So that's why there's a difference in the vote.
Mr. Morton.
I would like to point out that this is not as big an article as it appears. Just earlier in the evening, we rescinded $250,000 that was already appropriated and approved by the CPA and this town meeting. This adds essentially $100,000 to the previously approved $250,000. And the reason being that at that time, the Stoughton Redevelopment Authority was negotiating with someone who was going to run it as a restaurant. And all we had to do was tighten the building up a bit, and then that person would have taken over and fitted out the building. Now we want to do things to make the building more readily useful to the town. And that is, it won't be an entire fit out, but it will secure the building, it'll make it watertight, It'll improve the building, it'll move the heat, it'll put heat in the building, and it'll change the bathrooms to make the building immediately useful. So that, keep in mind, we are really talking about 100,000 more than we had already appropriated to restore the building. And the reason being, we want to move it to a position where we can begin to use it immediately for town purposes. And there could be meetings, there could be all kinds of things there. As a matter of fact, Friends of Cape and Reynolds had a concert there for a couple of years running in the building. Oh, I don't know what,
Yes.
okay, I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. O'Regan? No? Mr. Murphy?
I have an issue with the CPC fund borrowing money. I understand we have to put money into these properties and everything else, but we keep borrowing money, or their group keeps putting up borrowing money. There's enough money in their fund to pay for this up front, so there is, number one, no interest to be paid. Number two, if we keep borrowing money, yes, they have money in their piggy bank. Well, at some point, you got to break it out of that piggy bank and pay for all these different projects that they have purchased. I'm opposed to the borrowing part of this. If someone wants to make a motion to remove borrowing and they pay for it right up front, I would agree to that. But I will not support this as a borrowing article.
Mr. Morton, could you explain something on this borrowing?
First of all, the funds are going to be repaid from the CPA fund, not from the general treasury. That fund is more than adequate to restore this. Second, it is a cash flow issue. It's a cash flow issue in the sense that if we expend all of this money up front, we may not be able to finance other projects that are coming before us. Understand that, by the way, we had a borrowing article of about $1.8 million for the Swans Tavern restoration and elderly housing, and we are going to rescind that article in the annual town meeting because that project has fallen through. So we're not borrowing anywhere near the capacity of the CPA. We're not jeopardizing the credit of the town because it comes from a segregated account and it does not come from the general funds of the town. So the CPC has decided that this would be the kinds of thing to bond now while the interest rates are extremely low, and it will preserve cash for future major projects that are coming along in the town center, for example.
Again, I get to the point to where they keep borrowing money against money they see potentially coming in. And here's a case of where, at what point do they have a borrowing, a balance that exceeds the amount of money that's coming in? Now it becomes a deficit. Personally, I'm opposed to the borrowing part. That's it.
The CPC does have a borrowing limit. It cannot borrow more than the amount that we collect from the local charges for the CPA tax. And we're miles below that limit, and we will be sure to stay below that limit.
Ms. Walsh?
Cynthia Walsh, Precinct 2. I move the question.
That's a cut-off debate. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. As this is a borrowing article, all those in favor, please rise, and the chairman take account. Precinct 1. 10. Precinct 1 is 10. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 10. Precinct 3. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 7. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 10. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 10. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 8. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 4. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 4. All those opposed, please rise. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 is 1. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 7. Precinct 3. Precinct 3, 3. Precinct 4. Precinct 0, 1. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 0. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 4. Precinct 7. 0, 2. You've got to speak a little bit louder. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 1. Seven, 47, 52. $26. Motion carries. 63 yes, 18 no, 1 abstention. Now, I need the motion you've wanted most.
Eric
Mr.
Coleman,
Coleman.
Precinct 5, move to dissolve this special town meeting.
All those in favor of dissolving the what? The coffee? No. All those in favor, say aye. You did. Anybody opposed?
See? You're
No,
count-
it's
and look, in
unanimous.
an hour and a half, we're going to tell.
Dissolve.
We're going to tell them this time.
You'll dissolve. 8, 30, 9.
Paul?